Well, we're going to bring in Valerie de Kemp now, our environment editor. This is to talk about negotiators who've reached that historic deal at the UN Biodiversity Conference in Montreal. That agreement, the most significant effort yet to protect the world's lands and oceans and provide critical financing to save biodiversity in the developing world. Valerie, tell us a bit more about what's in the deal.
Yeah, well, the most significant part of this agreement is the commitment to protect 30% of the world's ocean and 30% of the world's land by 2030. And that was the overarching goal of this conference that is meant to guide all action. In the same way that in climate diplomacy, we have the 1.5 degree goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now the 30 by 30 goal is the equivalent, but for nature. And it's not just that really key goal of 30 by 30, but we're also looking at 23 other targets, including cutting subsidies to farming practices that harm ecosystems. There's also an agreement for cutting by half nutrient runoff from farms, and we know that this is a major source of ocean pollution. And there's also a commitment to reducing the risk of pesticides by 50%. This in a bid to tackle the collapse of insect populations. Finance, the money that will help countries reach that goal, is also a big part of this deal. Countries have agreed to provide $30 billion every single year by 2025 for conservation efforts. And as always, that money will flow from wealthy nations to poor island nations and developing countries. A figure, though, that falls short if you ask South American countries, African countries, which are home to vast rainforests and a large chunk of the ecosystems that are so vital for the health of the planet. It was one of the main sticking points of the negotiations. The Democratic Republic of Congo even appeared to block the entire deal over financial aid, but now they got a compromise. Instead of having a new mechanism, a new fund, they have some sort of funding mechanism, but within an existing framework that already exists. Bearing in mind, Jeannie, very quickly, that every single year, countries already agreed to mobilize $100 million for climate change. And they have never actually reached that target. So we'll have to see how they're able to even put more money on the table for biodiversity.
And over the past few weeks, we've been hearing from advocates saying this is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Does this deal meet expectations?
Well, I think, negotiators and activists will certainly walk out of the conference feeling that this deal is successful, and it does mark a major turning point. And again, as I was saying, in the same way that the fight against climate change had its Paris moment, a historic moment of countries coming together to rein in emissions, well, now biodiversity is also having its historic moment with the Montreal Kunming Agreement, as we know this agreement to be called. And again, we've never had a global conservation goal at this scale. There's the good, there's the not so good. Obviously, in the deal, we have heard from activists who were hoping that the goal was going to be more ambitious, that the timetables would be more ambitious to reach the goals of this deal. And there's a question, obviously, of how seriously world leaders will take these commitments. What I would say, though, is that this deal is different from its predecessors, which were largely ignored. And the difference is that now it puts government plans and accountability at the heart of the deal. So there's a destination and there are timetables for governments to reach those deals. They will be coming back every few years to take stock of the progress that has been made. And now governments need to go back home and start working on their plans in order to reach, the 30 by 30 goal. So it's not just vague promises, but we have a roadmap. And again, what I usually say, Jeannie, is that it's easy to dismiss whether it's climate talks or biodiversity talks as just being more talk and no action. But I think that what's really important to keep into perspective is that now we can hold governments accountable, and this is also a strong signal to markets, to investors, that they need to begin integrating nature into their business plans in the same way that they are beginning to integrate climate in their strategies.